What's up, guys? I'm Bind, and today we're talking markers. You all know them, you've all used them. They come in gray, they come in blue, they come in red, they come without color, and of course, they come in fake. But also, you might have guessed it, they come in digital now. So, what's up with that? You may have seen this stuff on Instagram or on other social media apps recommended to you, different brands, always promoting analog style brushes, textures that you can use basically in Photoshop or Clip Studio, Procreate, all kinds of apps for painting, and they're aiming at recreating the analog feeling. So I thought I'd test them for myself and also for you. But truth be told, I was pretty interested in that because I have a lot of markers, as you can maybe see. They're all the way in the back, and as you can also see, they're quite used and old, and everybody knows they are very expensive. So why not have them in a digital form? You can use it with the graphic tablet that you might already have or that you bought, like the one I showed in an earlier video. If it's a like hobbyist consumer product, you can have a graphic tablet nowadays for as little as 150 bucks, right? So nowhere the price you would have to spend on all these markers in all these colors, because they're like $5 or $6 a pop, and it's very easy to buy 10, 20, 50 of them, and they also come in huge boxes and in huge color palettes. And of course, that being analog alcohol based markers, you cannot just mix them like watercolors or acrylics or anything like that. So without further ado, let's jump into Photoshop and I'll show you how to use them. Alright guys, we are in Photoshop, and this is the new version of Photoshop because, as you might have seen in my other videos, I like to also use older versions. But in this case, using the up-to-date version, and that is because some of the features for these markers, they work better in the new versions. But more about that in a second. So first things first, I prepared you a little drawing. But this just serves as showcase when I will later draw into that to see if it looks with a real drawing. Of course, you can also do drawings with the brushes that you get from the pack. So first, what do you get? So full transparency, this brush pack is by True Grit, one of the great companies that provide those analog brush sets. There are others. This is just I came across them and found the look to be very interesting. I tried it out and yeah, was a success, so I'm showing it to you. It's not sponsored or anything, it's just I like it. But of course, truth be told, these little companies would not mind being sponsored by them, of course, because it's a good product and it's a reasonable price. I think it's just like 30 bucks for the whole pack, and that's really nothing compared to other traditional media and what that costs in terms of paper and material and all of that. So if you open the app and you go to your brushes, what you will find is you will find this tab here. Same way, if you already expanded the brushes, you can find that function here, and you just have to import brushes, select the ABR file that comes in the pack that you purchased, and then the brush library will show up on the bottom here of all the brushes. Usually it goes like this. There's the Photoshop brushes, which are those, and then these are my brushes, and then now these are the brushes I purchased. Photo is named Color Mark after, I think, the company that this was emulating or trying to emulate traditional markers, right? So in here, everything is neatly organized into the folders. This is the part that does not work on the older versions of Photoshop, and also the swatches, which we'll come to in a second. So, expanding all of these, you will see immediately it's clear what they do. This is your liners, your markers, your effects, and your erasers. So, let's do away with the drawing for a second, and I'll show you how those brushes behave. But first, before we do that, there's something to mention, because these brush packs, they not only do they come with brushes, but they also come with paper textures in this case. And the paper texture is an Photoshop file that contains these two layers, and that's basically a high-res scan of the paper texture. And it is once applied via multiply. You can see if I switch that on, you'll see the paper grain coming up, right? And then a second layer, which is called highlights, which is applied by a screen blending effect. And if you switch this on, nothing happens. And the reason for that is that this is reserved for the blacks. Because if you would now paint pure black, I will do this with a flat brush so that it's obvious what happens. Then you see how you no longer have the paper texture on that black, and that's because it's the maximum black. It's a perfect 100% opacity black. So for this case, they implemented the highlights, which is like a light map that comes on top. You activate this. Now you can see you get your grain back on the blacks, and that's because it negatively blends via screen effect onto these tones. So having these two active, and they stay on top. They're supposed to stay on top because they blend over everything that you do, right? So your art is down here. So that way you get the nice paper effect, whether you paint perfect whites or perfect blacks or anything in between. That's the reason. Now, let me show you the brushes. So I'll do a new layer, and I'll zoom out again a little bit so that you can see. Let's first do away with these. So only brushes from the set, as you can see right now. So I found to be, well, we can very quickly try this, right? This is different liners, and they have a different feel and stroke to it. Some are more smooth, some are more grainy, some go a little bit from thick to thin. So, but they are fairly similar. So the one that I liked the most was this one, which is a grainier version. And then of course you could in theory change them if you know what you're doing in the brush modifications, right? But I'm not getting into this in this video. Made another video about brush creation that you can watch, where I explain how to manipulate the brushes to create your own brushes basically. So whatever you like here, you set the size, and then you can basically paint away. Now, one thing, speaking about brushes, that is unusual about these brushes is because they're trying to emulate the classical media, they are all set to multiply. And what does that mean? That means that they will only ever get darker while you're on the same layer. So normally you could paint white on top, but here it doesn't work, right? As you can see, because the multiply effect ignores white. It will only give it more color and more dark tones, and make them add up until you reach the maximum saturation of that tone, just like with the traditional marker. Actually, not quite like with the traditional marker, because the traditional marker stops a little bit sooner. It does not get quite as dark. It just gets saturated, and then you put more color on the paper, it does not get any more intense, right? So this is an emulation of that. It's not 100% accurate, have to tell you this right now, but it's pretty good. Okay, so let's try this. From the other markers, they just quickly showing you how they look. Fairly similar, a little softer, a little harder, with a grain to it, which is weird because usually markers don't look quite like this. But there's a lot. This is my favorite, the 200. Now you can see what happens. Push down, and if I layer them, they get darker, right? So, all right, I had to do a quick restart here, and that is because I realized the pressure sensitivity was not working as expected. So, but it is now, and I'm going to show you, of course, because that is, of course, how the brushes look, but almost all of them also react to the pressure of your brush. So, for example, this one, which is like the 200 squared, which is one of my favorites. Let's go back to the black. In reality, what you can do is you can apply pressure. That is the maximum pressure, and then if I go to release the pressure, it fades out. So it's pretty great looking if you ask me, because that is actually what you expect from the behavior of the gray markers on the paper, right? So it will not break up quite as much as it did here when I showed it like this, and of course you will get a decent blending just by applying more and more pressure. Will not be perfect, but then again, well, I'm sure you can make it kind of perfect, but it's the same like with the analog markers. It's not that easy, and it might not create a perfect result. But then again, I think if you want to use this digitally, you are looking for a not perfect result anyways. So that being said, the others, quite obvious effect markers, are just markers that don't exist on paper, I would say, because you're not getting this fuzziness or anything. I think some of them are blenders. Let's try it. Not sure what's going on here. Oh yeah, that's right. So okay, let's do this on a new one. So that's basically as hatching for you in all directions, which is kind of, I don't like this that much, because that's usually the stuff that you want to do this yourself, because this is a little bit lame, I'm gonna be honest here. This is pretty cool because you can it's wet, and then you can smudge around on the paper. That is pretty cool. So the 100 one, what's the name? Add wet blend effect. It makes sense. That's actually cool. This is just distort what is already there. Pigment highlight. So all kinds of little effects that you have here that you can play around with. I'm not personally so much interested into these effects. I am here for mainly for the markers, a little bit for the outliners, because I have my own outliners created that I like. And the erasers, frankly, you do not need them, because you can use anything as an eraser. And then stuff like this is a little bit sharp for an eraser in my for my taste, because typically, yeah, this is more like it. You want the eraser to have an outer shape that is not perfect, so that it doesn't look fake, right? So the 35 here, what's his name? Streaky eraser is good. This one, yeah. But then again, you can of course also just switch to the eraser manually, and then, yeah, okay, you can't do that because it's on multiply. If you were to switch it back to normal, you would be able to use any of these brushes as an eraser, but the way it's working, the way it's supposed to be working, because that's multiply, you're supposed to switch to the actual eraser. So in this case, I would recommend streaky eraser here. Leaves a very nice analog feeling behind. Okay, so what about color? Usually, of course, you can just select any color that you want, and then you will see that even though it's a lighter color, you cannot go lighter because it's a multiply brush. Just in real life, if you go over the light gray or if you go over the dark gray with a lighter gray, it will not get any lighter naturally. So everybody knows this. You just have to get yourself in the mindset of working on paper here. But you can see that this really looks very much like paper. So now let's try this for real. But before we do, this color, of course you can always choose color like this, but there is an interesting thing that they provide you with, and that is color swatches. So just like the brush library, they have a swatch library, which is kind of more like picking, right, your own little markers with predetermined color. So they have, and you can also load this the same way, import swatches, the same way you import the brushes. And then what you get is the color mark palette, again with nice little folders. So they have the vibrance, they have the grays, they have the skin tones, and the fluoros. So what they are is basically, this is your neons, this is different palettes, this is skin. You can see a more earthy tones, and this is grays, neutral blue grays, very classic, and this is your normal color palette. So if you want to paint with these colors, you can. And what this means is that you can create from these swatches your own palette, and you can overpaint like so, and you can have the feeling that you really, every time you select the color, you get the exact same tone, just like with your analog real marker, right? So if you like this, use this. If you don't like this so much, of course you can always select color the traditional, or let's say the Photoshop way. Okay, so anyways, back to the sketch. Now I want to show you something here with the sketch that you could not see it maybe before, and that is, this sketch is an analog sketch. I did this by hand, scanned it, and then basically I color range selected it. So that is now isolated, right? So that means there's no white baked into the sketch. It's just a sketch as if you would have drawn it digitally. There's just the dark strokes and no whites, and also these dark strokes, because my scanner is pretty good. They are not perfect. You can clearly see what's going on in terms of graininess here in the paper with the media. So that works fine, and I think it's very nice. Should be a very nice fit together with these markers, with these brushes. So let's try this out for once. The other thing is that I was mentioning is that, again, now we don't have the paper texture in this sketch because I basically did not select this. I just regulate it out usually, right? But now we can bring it back. It's really nice looking. It looks as if this is really paper now. So if you go into the paper texture, you will find these two settings. I already pointed them out, and you don't have to use them the way that they intend you to use them. So for example, because I know a lot about Photoshop, right? Immediately I know this is like a lot of stuff that a lot of mock-ups do, right? You can, and this, for example, the highlight, it starts at 15%, the other is 100. So for me, it's not, for my style personally, I don't need to see the paper texture that strong. So if you don't want it that strong, all you have to do is get it down a little bit. So for me, 60% is enough. I'm not sure if the video can still pick this up, but that is still good. Because I don't want it to be dull. I want it to be very white, very brilliant. So I'm not going to have this as dark. And the other way around, you see what this does to my blacks. My blacks are already pretty good. If we had pure black going on here, let's delete these layers in between. Now the art goes here in between later. Let's say I add up all of this tone. You can clearly see that once it clocks up, there is no structure to be seen, just like I showed you before, unless you switch on that screening effect. And now it brings it back. So what I want is, I want a little bit of that, but not quite as much. So I'm toning it down. I want to see a little bit. So we're now at 8%. So the black will not be super clean. And that's enough for me. Now the disadvantage of setting this to high is it will make your blacks less dark. You see that? It will break your blacks. So it looks pretty good around what they suggested at the 15%, but I think less is even better. It's more a little bit less prominent. So I like that. So I keep this at 8. Keep this at 60, and then we'll see what's happening. Of course, color goes in between here, so it doesn't matter really. I can at any point just change these values and then run with it. All right, for now, we could erase this. Let's see. Well, it's actually pretty good, pretty good. All right, so now let's get to it. Now, I will start, I think, with the swatches and see where this gets me, right? So, at first, now, of course, if you want to be super hardcore about this, what you do is simply you use one layer, like if it was one paper, right? But that, it will have disadvantages. Let's see. So now, I have to decide the color palette quickly for this piece. I'm going to use mainly this brush because I like flat brushes. I don't like fuzziness. Again, this is also pretty okay, but yeah, this is just, for me, this is where it's at. But that's a matter of personal preference. Not telling you what to use here. And also you can have them much bigger than a real brush, right? Than a real marker. So for me, what I would do with a real traditional marker, I would go, of course, from light to dark. So in this instance, I want this to be a darker sky and then glow down here. So I would almost need to start with something like this, with a tone like this, and then go up here and then maybe become slightly more. All right, so now I have not yet released the brush, and already what you can see is that nice little patterns are forming here, just like if it was real a real paper. So that is really nice. I really appreciate that. And then at the same way, this is going to be water down here. So I'm bringing the tone in here, and I'm also bringing the tone over the black for once. And then, yeah, we have to be careful. Of course, now if we want to erase, we can erase. Go back to the whites, make this less intense, so that's possible. And now let's see what we get in terms of darkness here. Yeah, now if I want, wow, if I want it dark, I would have to do something like this, right? So let's see. I'm pushing down very, very mildly. So I just want there to be some kind of a cloudy thing going on. And less over there. And then we'll make it a little bit darker over here. I have still not released the brush. All right, so then same way, doing this down here a little bit. And now we can go a little bit darker and smaller in the brush size. So now remember, you cannot do what you would normally do on Photoshop. I cannot just pick this color and then go light up here. It will make it darker because it's a multiply brush. It is like in reality on paper. You cannot go back here. Okay, so you would have to erase the whole deal and then go brighter again. And we will maybe do this in a minute for the other stuff. So let's see. I would need, I guess, another bright tone. What would be the ship? Ship would be metal, or this kind of a thing. And also this would, does this look good at all? Let's see. Yeah, this is intense. Like you cannot undo. It's like once you have it, you have it. Right? But that's, yeah, it's interesting. I would say it works. This would be the same pen. So far I've used now is the equivalent of using 3 different pens. And I'm kind of hesitant to release the brush, to be perfectly honest with you, because I know that it will create this layered effect if I do so. What I mean by that is showing you in a second. So if I release and do it again, it will create this, and I'm not so fond of this. Of course, you could, like, I can erase this. I can try to fix stuff here, but maybe that's not the best thing to do. Well, see, this needs to be much darker. What is really cool, I will say that, is that now I can really just use the same thing to go darker and darker. And then, yeah, so that's not bad. Let's see if what else we can use here. Certainly I would want something like more color in the foreground. Now it's very weird for me to have to pay attention to these outlines here, because digitally usually I would never mind. I would just paint over it sloppily and then just correct it. Giving this more color. It works. Works all right. But yeah, you can see if you want to correct, then you would have to really do it like this, and then come back here and fiddle with it, and it will not get perfect. Like the correction, it will not be perfect. So just be aware of that. So what's next? Let's do the object. Maybe that's gray, and maybe it's warmer here, because there's less blue. Maybe let's try to erase a little bit before we apply a lighter tone. That could be good. It's pretty interesting what happens here with the tones sometimes. That is not good, because it was the shadow side. You should not have erased that. And now going back to the palette and see what's there, what is for offer. It kind of feels limited, right? It's interesting. So maybe we take something like this in a second. Okay, let's do it the other way around. So I'll do, am I doing gray? It's just this a little bit boring. Maybe we'll do this brighter version of a gray. And that way you can, of course, mix. And of course, if I was to erase this, I can make that really lighter, which looks cool. Now we're already kind of cheating, I feel, because it's not really what you could do in on paper. But yeah, let's I mean, we're still on one layer, so I guess that's interesting. Okay, now I'll do some red for this. And I will be sloppy on purpose here, because that is what would happen on paper. You would not be able to be so perfect. Also, now it's a little bit, we'll see. Then I need a darker blue, because this is going to need like shading here, and then I'll lay this down. And see how this renders. Because of course it would be darker over here, and then you can give this a little bit of a shading, of course. Everything down here would be in the shadow. I guess if you're being too precise, this is defeating the purpose here. So I'm trying not to do this too much. Be a little bit more loose. Let's go back to the eraser. Now it's great that you can put some highlights here just by erasing, which is pretty cool. And of course we can also try stuff out in terms of lighting effects. Maybe we'll do this in a second. I need to get back to the sky, and of course let's see. All right, so that's now going to be harder because I want a little bit darkness here, but now I really feel like I have to avoid everything. So that's immediately, it might defeat what I erased here. So yeah, you have to bear with me a little bit because I have not practiced this beforehand. Oh, this is really unforgiving now. You can see once you go over here, to be super careful if you want to do stuff like this glazing. It's not working very well. All right. Give me my highlight back. And now we could do something like this. We could just erase here. Well, maybe not as aggressive. And then put a tone here, of course. So let's stay maybe with the orange. That was actually good. Could do something like this. You can see this is not working out then. Have to be really precise now. All right. And then the same tones, of course, we can bring them in here. Yeah, this is working, but it is tough. It is not super easy to utilize this. So would do let's do this a little bit quicker and dirtier. Oh, this would need, I think, more darkness here, and then here would be light, I guess. Yeah, the stuff is happening very naturally. Now really using the break in the line drawing to also break up the brush with what you would do in reality, of course. It's really kind of a strange feeling to be doing that digitally. So yeah, do this a little bit more. You guys don't mind sticking around. Try a different red. So it's okay. Get some white back. Yeah, this really, you don't pay attention, this gets dark. It gets dark very fast. So do some more rendering on the ship here. Being able to work with white here is pretty cool, I have to say, because I can now decide that some of this stuff will remain white, which if I was to do this analog, you would have to have a very specific plan and leave this white from the beginning, so you could never just erase this like that. So yeah, this is pretty cool to be able to do that. Also, we can come in with the red again and do some red over here, which is cool, I think. Do some red over here maybe, and maybe some in here. See how that stuff looks. It's pretty good. Of course, what you can also do is the old trick that you can tone control this, right? If you're being a little bit too bright like I was doing, you can easily change that here. Also, of course, that is something that is just cool that you would never be able to do like on paper, of course. So I will do a little bit more rendering of this, and then we'll call it a day. Okay, this is now getting tricky. I don't want to zoom in because it's kind of lame. You wouldn't do that on paper either. And then let's do some grays here. So this works out, and the cool thing is if I want it darker, I really just have to push down more, and then immediately with any gray I can render stuff in here. So that is really cool. So in that way it's very intuitive. I'm just not very used to it right now, so that's why you will see me hesitate a little bit here. Let's see what else is there. Yeah, that would be cool. Yes, so maybe try a different brush. I really want to make my selections. You guys know that I love the lasso tool, right? So it would be very cool to do something like this on here, which you absolutely can do it. You see, is actually that is pretty sick. So let's try a little bit to do a little bit more with this. because of the structure of the paper, it's kind of forgiving, right? It lets me get away with it. I thought it would look too clinical, but actually it's fine. It's really good. I'll just do this a little bit more. See what's happening. Now, obviously, what you cannot do, what you must not do, is the thing that you would do in full digital painting, which is to just render this perfectly, because the more you darken and darken and darken this up, this will not look like a paper anymore, right? And it will become, I guess, overworked very quickly. So that's just something that I think you should be aware of. So now, see, I'm just taking this tone and I'm going into the blue here, and I get something really, really cool. It's just like you have some experience with the media on paper, and you can really just mix these tones very, very naturally. So this part, I really like it. Painting into the blue just with the brown. That's really cool, I have to say. So now also correcting this. Once again, it's really cool being able to lay down the gray here. And then I should, let's try the same gray here. Yeah, this works. That's pretty awesome. So the same bright gray, but it lets me do that because it will just go darker and ever darker, which again is not 100% realistic, because it wouldn't do that in reality. But yeah, it's I think you can get used to this working that way here digitally. So I can shade here. Maybe I should do that with a blue. We had this blue initially, I think. So it should be very possible for me to paint more with this blue. Yeah. Gives this a little bit of vibrancy. Let's see what the yellow does. That's also cool. And then of course, where you want it darker, you can get it darker. So actually this eraser is cool because it's not instant. It gives you just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit more every time. So this, I can see that work pretty well. Let's see, I think this is still a little bit bright over here. And then of course, let's see if I can paint the dark reflection in here. That would be cool. So starting from here, I guess everything would need to be darker. Kind of works. It's in one way it's pretty freeing to be on the same layer because you don't have to think about layers. But you can see that I'm not super fast with this because I have to also think a little bit here on the fly. No, this is not working so well. I wanted more blue, darker blue. Oh no, this is not working. This is not good. But this is good. And then maybe make this dark all the way. And then be here. And a little bit here. So do we get a sense of reflection? Kind of. It's the red. Let's see. Yeah, that doesn't work. We would have to do a little bit of erasing here to bring the red. This is a little bit dull. Now this red, I'll have to see why that is. Let's see. Yeah, it's kind of works. What was that? I forgot already. But yeah. So this, let's see if we can make a bright reflection here. Yeah, kind of. So that works. Of course, there is a chance that if you overdo it, will not be so believable, and yeah, it will just not look a little bit too fake, maybe. So I think you want to be aware of that. And then let's try a second layer, because this, we could call this quits now pretty much any time. But I think there is a trick for you on a second layer. Look at this. Now the second layer, it kind of counters the multiply effect of the brush tip. So now all of a sudden I get bright again, right? So yeah, that's something. You might not want to use this because this is really now fake, and it's not, this would never work on paper, right? But I don't know, you decide for yourself. There are no rules really, but I think, yeah, I don't know, this looks a little bit off to me. Maybe if you do it more, this would work. Where it's pretty bright, I think it could work. Yeah, I guess like that. Well, if you want to go darker, you don't need this. But yeah, in this, for this case, could be a good idea to do. Also, let's put some stars, maybe. only working with that palette. Yeah, I would need white now, or I would need to erase the stars. Well, maybe that's just what happens. Yeah, I think so. I think we erase some stars out. That would be good. And I think we should try to not be perfect here either, because it gets boring. What about bigger star? No. Maybe very faint bigger star somewhere. Yeah, maybe. And it's also the thing that if you go too small, it will not be believable, because that's now the integration of like the texture of the paper with the rest of the brush and all. So also it's not like you can undo this easily, right? So let's see, if I want to go over this, that would be actually a problem now, because I will not get the same mixture of color back again. So now we're out of undos. So in this case, we might want to do white just on top. But then again, it does not like quite look the same. Do a few more. Yeah, not bad, but yeah, I think it's the same like with everything. You would have to practice with this a little bit. Some stuff looks pretty good, and some stuff I think you have to be careful not to make it too fake, right? So let's see, what else can we do on the separate layer? Yeah, we can go over everything again. Maybe make stuff. Do we have something like a blender? Yeah, it would be this. Wow, okay, this is interesting now. So we can do blending. Ooh, hey, it's crazy. So this was the crazy color, right? Yeah, it was the very neon-like color. So let's see. So this also makes it brighter, but it kind of gets out the grain too much, so to that point that it looks fake. So yeah, be careful with that, I would say. Be very careful. Maybe if it's just getting darker, it's not a big deal. So yeah, I would say that's fine. Doing this exclusively darker. Let's try brighter. That's very bad, because that immediately looks fake. Now let's erase from this. If I want to erase from this, yeah, this works. So you can erase from it. So you can do an atmospheric blending of sorts, I would say. That kind of works. See what I mean? This is too much. All in all, can we combine this? I think so. Yeah, we can. So what that also means is that now we can do iterations, basically. Let's try. Okay, let's get the reds. Manipulate the reds. That is cool. I like that because the swatches, of course, they influence you greatly in your color choice, right? So yeah, this is something that you would maybe have done it a lot differently if it's not for the swatches, right? So I think that's cool, really cool, and really useful. I was not sure how well it would work out because it is a grainy thing and maybe it mixes colors, and maybe if you go through the spectrum it will not look good, but in this case it works. I don't want to change this. Maybe the cyan, which is, there should be a lot, right? Yeah, that would also work. We could do this easily, make this bluer and less saturated. So get a really cool look to this. So yeah, I think that's cool. And also let's try the levels. We have done this before, but make it more vibrant and go dark here to the paper. Pretty cool. This is what we painted. This is yeah, an iteration now. Both is good, both is acceptable. But yeah, guys, I think you get the point here. I think this you saw what this can do and cannot do. I think if you want to play around with this, yeah, I don't see why you shouldn't get it. If you like this, if you like the style, it's not very expensive. So yeah, maybe give it a try, maybe not. Anyways, I hope this was informative, and yeah, let me know down below. So guys, let me know what you prefer. Is it this one or the traditional marker? Let me know about your experiences. Let me know if this was a comprehensive demo at all, and if it helped you make up your mind whether or not to get it. I think it's priced pretty fairly, and that's across all of the offerings that you have across different companies. It's never really very expensive, so I think it's just a matter of whether you want it or not, and whether you can live with the compromises. Because at the end of the day, guys, only the real thing is the real thing. Only color on paper behaves like that and will have the exact authentic look. But for some illustrations, for some effects, and for some, I guess, goals, visual goals, it's really nice to have it in your toolbox. So maybe there will be a reason or not for you to buy it or not. So let me know what you think down below. As always, let me know if you want to see more experimental stuff like that, and talk to you next time.